Ashes.
It's gone straight into the confectionery stall and out again.
Ben Stokes, here he comes, he bowls and he's flogged that away into leg side. That should go for 4. The fielder down, they can't get it. And Ben Stokes has reached a truly remarkable 100.
Here comes Warren Bowles, and he's got it, there it is, he's got it, and Strauss came forward to play him, away to leg, was beaten in the air. Horn has taken his 700th wicket, and Strauss walks disconsolately away.
Sits around the corner, there's hesitation as a misfield, and he gets the run, and he's made 200 in a test match against Australia. That is a wonderful achievement from Alistair Cook.
And a huge boos ring out around the ground for Steve Smith's 50. Bowls to David Warner, who's hit on the pad, appeal goes out! Warner's out! And Broad gets his man, he could have had him first ball. And, well, there's the Hollies stand for you as David Warner rips off his glove.
And Flintoff goes roaring in again. He's there, he bowls to Ponting. Oh, my word, he's caught behind. Is he there? Yes, he is! He's caught behind. A fabulous over by Andrew Flintoff.
Cummins bowls now and he steps away his ball. What a ghastly dismissal, which really sums it up. Nowhere near it, couldn't reach the ball. Stumps are shattered and Australia have bowled into and out.
Anderson's bowled and it's all over. Australia have won magnificently.
What memories. Here we go again. Happy Ashes Eve, everybody.
Yeah, we're all smiling listening to those.
We really
Great
are.
memories, yeah.
Amazing memories. And there'll be plenty more made, undoubtedly, over the next 6 weeks. I'm joined tonight by our cricket correspondent, Jonathan Agnew, by veteran, legendary commentator, Jim Maxwell, and by 3 times Ashes winner, Stephen Finn. Evening, all.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
Veteran, Jim, dear me.
Well, esteemed, revered in
There you
that
go.
case. I think we can have that.
Age before beauty. You know that.
That's certainly true.
The last Ashes Eve that we were together, Aggers, we were very close to the beach, weren't we? In Sydney, waiting for the start of that Ashes series when we didn't know what was going to happen.
Well, no, but of course we weren't actually at the ground.
We weren't at the ground.
We weren't allowed in Brisbane.
No, because of COVID, because that strange tour that definitely was not void, despite what Stuart Broad might have suggested.
Mischievously said. No,
I can say the temperature here in Birmingham this evening is not that different to what it was like in New South Wales on whatever day in December it was.
It's always a great moment. It's always so exciting, and I think the major thing about it, and Ben Stokes, as you'll hear later, I think agreed that actually you can actually stop talking about it finally, which is great. The build-up, and I think is, in my experience of doing these, there's been a lot of hype about this series, which is great. I mean, that really is a good thing. You heard there the end of Hobart and Robinson's dismissal. It was awful, and it just felt like there was a huge gulf between the two teams. And that doesn't feel to be the case now. There's still this question, as we'll talk about, I'm sure, about how England will go against playing this type of cricket against a much better team than they've faced so far this year. But even so, there's so much more optimism now around the camp than there was then.
Yeah, I suppose you could sum up that series by saying it was from hope to Hobart, really, when it was just kind of gradually diminishing as the time went on. Jim, how many series is this for you that you've covered now as a commentator?
Oh, I can't remember.
When was your first?
First series, I was way back, Pakistan and Australia in 1977.
And first Ashes would have been?
First Ashes I worked on was the 78-9 in Australia with Brealey, triumphant with the England side, and the Callow Graham Yallop in charge, yes. That wasn't great cricket. And I was reminded of some of that today. I was reading up on 2 of my old pen portrait types for England way back. Did you ever see David Allen and Fred Titmus bowl?
I played against Fred Titmus.
Well, there you go. Yes, he played for 5 decades, of course. I read a quote from David Allen about our old friend Geoffrey Boycott. He said he was a wonderful batsman, but he was a very bad listener.
We could all probably agree with that.
So you've covered, a series, if everyone wants to do the maths,
yes,
series from 78, 79 onwards. Aggers' brain is churning here. When was what's your first Ashes memory, Finney?
My first Ashes memory, I'm of the generation where the 2005 Ashes was the one that really gripped us. I think I was at school and it was on free-to-air TV, Channel 4, which made a huge difference. It meant that a lot more eyeballs were on it when it wasn't behind the paywall. I remember we had these massive, great big TVs, the ones that seem to go back about 4 foot, and they get wheeled into the classrooms. And you could watch Channel 4 cricket on the TV, and that's the one that really captivated me. And I would have been 16 years old then.
Wow. And of course, let's not forget that Australia haven't won a series here. I mean, they retained the Ashes last time by drawing the series, but they haven't actually won an Ashes series since 2001 in this country.
It's been very hard for teams to go to their respective opponents, if you like, and win. It really has. You know, England have only done it once in my time of doing this job. Of course, 10-11 with Andrew Strauss in charge, and Australia haven't won here for 22 years. And there are a number in their squad who won't be coming back. This is the one chance they've got to win. And you know, we're talking about it today actually with Jason Gillespie. You are an Ashes winner or you're not an Ashes winner. And that's particularly the case with captains. You know, Joe Root has won more Test matches than any other England captain. Yeah, but never won the Ashes, though. That always kind of was a rider, you know. And as a player, you want to go away, if you're an English player, to go to Australia and win the Ashes. And that's certainly the case with people like David Warner, who I'm sure we'll be talking about later as well, and Nathan Lyon and these people. It's their last chance.
And that's, and for England players as well. You know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry. So, and for you, Finney, what's it like to be a player on Ashes Eve?
Well, you're trying your best to not listen to things like this, to be quite honest. You're sat in your hotel room and just trying to insulate yourself from the outside noise, I think, because you're very aware when you're walking down the street, people are wishing you well. And in a city like this, where the hotels that you stay in are in the middle of town, you get people coming up to you all the time. And it's nice to get a dose of it, to understand what it means to people, I think, is a massive thing, because it means a lot to you. But when you insulate yourself from it, you only sort of live in that environment. If you go out and people are wishing you well, it can really spur you on. But certainly now the players won't be roaming around the streets. They'll be in their hotel rooms, bit of room service, a bit of music or a series to distract themselves, and just to try and calm your mind down, to try and make sure you get something that looks something like a good night's sleep. But there will be some nerves and some jitters up there this evening before coming to the ground tomorrow morning. And I can't wait. I'm so excited. I'm actually more excited now, I think, than when I played for tomorrow morning, because you know you're going to the cricket ground and you've got to focus, whereas tomorrow I'm going to be able, certainly as my first home Ashes that I've covered with you guys, I'm going to be there soaking up the atmosphere. I'll probably get there at about 6:30 in the morning.
We reckon you've done 24 series, Jim. Henry's crunched the numbers, and we think that's 24 Ashes series.
Well, yes.
Well played, Jim.
I'm beyond the numbers these days. I'm a bit like my mother, so you never ask a woman her age. Right?
Look, let's have a listen to the England captain, shall we? He's been having a chat to Aggers today.
Well, Ben, finally we're here. It seems to be a long time coming. How do you feel, David, for all kicking off?
Yeah, you're right. I think today's actually probably been like the best day, because it's tomorrow. Obviously all the build-up days and stuff like that, you're just sort of wanting to get closer and closer, and now we're finally here with the day before. It's actually probably been the more, relaxed day, if anything.
I'll be sort of ready for business. There's no more pushing it away in the background. It's reality time.
Yeah, I think so. I guess obviously the build-up to these series is always a lot bigger than anything else. So yeah, it all gets going tomorrow.
Have you enjoyed the build-up though? Have you enjoyed all the talking up and so on?
It's something that always comes around. You know, I played in, this is my 4th Ashes, I think. Yeah, so used to it. But yeah, it's been a real good build-up, but obviously on the back of, I think, Australia obviously winning the World Test Championship, and obviously the way in which we've gone about our cricket over the last year. It's been, I think it's been a pundit stream.
It's been a contrast in the build-up. I mean, you've been playing golf in Scotland, the Aussies beating India in the World Championship final. I mean, how do you look at that contrast? I mean, do you feel more relaxed as a result of that?
I don't think we can say if we feel more relaxed than what Australia did. I think it's congratulations to them for winning that, but we had our sort of plans in motion around what we wanted to do, and I think everyone knows that a big part of what me and Brendan love to do is to get the group together and away from cricket, and just get together in a social environment and spend that time together, just reconnecting with each other and having some laughs, and then when we get here it's business time. You know, throughout the whole week we spent away together playing golf and having laughs on the golf course. It's repeating itself in here, just going back to those moments, and yeah, that's just the way we like to do things.
And it does help build a strong team spirit.
Yeah, I think it does. It's just you just spend more, as I say, you just spend more time together. You know, there's so much time spent at the cricket ground that you actually, the more time you spend away with each other, away from all that, you just understand the people you play with more as a person rather than a cricketer.
How about this pitch? I mean, you like to put opposition in. That looks quite flat, to me at least. What's your thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Edgbaston of the wicket we had last year against India was a really, really good cricket wicket. I think this one looks another good one, but only time will tell. You know, we'll just worry about that when we spend some time.
And Mark Wood, the decision there, it could be said that the attack's a bit one-dimensional with Broad, Robinson and Anderson, without some pace, unless, of course, you were just strapped up and you're going to come in and bowl some of those aggressive spells.
Are you saying I've got some pace?
I am.
Oh, thank you.
Last time I saw, anyway.
I think when you put Broad, Robinson, Anderson together, it sounds pretty good to me.
Okay, what's the decision about Wood then and pace?
Yeah, I mean, that's what Woody's got to offer. I think we're all in a mindset at the moment that everyone might play a part throughout this whole series. It's an extreme ask and an extreme reality, I think, for everyone to say that they're going to play all 5 games, because we just don't know what's going to happen. But Brodie's record, in particular against Australia, is very hard to look past, especially when you get into the opening game.
And how much are you going to be able to bowl? I know I've seen you steaming in there. Are you going to be able to bowl those sort of aggressive spells that we referred to there?
I think for me, where I've done the last 3 days has been a real big confidence boost for me. Bowling 3 spells in 3 days. And look, I think the way that I look at it, and the way that, you know, we've had David Saker come in, he hasn't said too much to me, but he said one thing that's real, I think, good advice. If I'm still bowling by the 4th and 5th test, then we've done something well. And
Moeen had a big smile on his face when I saw him this morning. And how's he been slotting back in again?
And typically Mo does. He's the life and soul of every dressing room he comes into. It's fantastic to have him back. And look, I'm really excited to see him walk back out there in the whites for England and show the world of what he can do on his great days.
The conversation, Ben, has been how your batsmen are going to go against the Australian attack. And the message that you're going to give those batsmen, is it more of the same, or well, you tell me?
I think there hasn't really been a message. It's about how we play, because I think, well, we know how we're going to play, and that's the way that England play. It's not about going out and doing anything different and hitting these messages home, because we have now found a way for us as a team to get the best out of ourselves as a collective, but also as individuals. And I think the message around, are we still going to be playing like this against the Australian attack or any other attacks, just sort of needs to be knocked on the head, because we found a way that works for us, and that's our natural.
Will it win you the Ashes?
I hope so. But if it doesn't, it's a shame, but oh well.
It's a shame, but oh well. It's kind of one of those, I wonder if it's one of those comments that'll go down a bit like, you know, Nathan Lyne saying we're going to finish careers. It's, at least he's not kind of, you know, he's managing expectations, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, it took me a bit surprised when that was the answer that he gave me, if I'm honest. But then that's the way that they are. I mean,
it's not life or death.
No, I mean, it's really interesting mindset, isn't it? I mean, we're back to the time when I was playing, and actually when Steve too, I suspect, was playing. It wasn't such a core group of almost guaranteed selections. You know, they can go off and play golf and have great fun and be great mates because they're all going to be playing next week. When I was playing, your chances of playing next week were very slim. Unless you did really well, you're out, and someone else would be coming in. You couldn't have this sort of mindset that they're trying to set themselves now. So, you know, times have changed, and therefore you can say things like that, because he's actually taking the pressure off his players by saying that. You know, come on, we're going to give it our best shot, but you know,
it's not the end of the world.
It's not the end of the world if it doesn't work. I mean, it did sound a bit surprising when he said it, I'll be honest. But that's the attitude that he has, and I think he's right about saying, knock on the head conversations. Look, well, it's going to be different because it's Australia about we're going to play. Except it is different because it's Australia, because this is by far the best attack that they've faced in this year of Bazball, and that is going to be a different challenge.
Are these the two least confrontational captains you've ever experienced, Jim, with him and Pat Cummins?
Maybe. Excuse me. When Tim Payne was in charge, it was a little like that as well. I think things have changed in the last 4 or 5 years. perhaps the IPL and the fact that cricketers play with and against each other in all sorts of competitions has helped, but it's the personalities. I think David Warner at one stage was allowed to run off a leash, and they sort of just shrugged their shoulders and turned the other way.
There was a run of spiky captains, though, wasn't there? I mean, Michael Clark. Ricky Ponting, Steve Orr. You can go back.
Matthew Hayden, my goodness, yeah.
But you can go back those captains.
And
they
enabled
rather
by coaches as well, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely.
They didn't condemn any prickly behaviour. They just turned away from it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think it's changed to a large extent under Pat Cummins, who's a very intelligent, calm, but authoritative leader. And I think Stokes just seems to me to go about his business as he does. But it strikes me as being quite interesting that there's no evidence of any fear in the way England are playing. So what's going to upset that? If they have a bad day tomorrow with the bat or something, is that going to be enough to throw them off the scent, as it were?
They'll say, we'll go harder.
Yeah, that's what they'll say.
That's what they'll say.
So at what point do they pull back a bit and bat like Dom Sibley or something?
But that's the question, isn't it? And that's why it's so tantalising, because these two have performed a miracle, really, in turning things around as they have done, from the West Indies defeat of last March to where they have come to. It is a miracle, really, to win 11 out of 13 Test matches when they won 1 out of 17.
Yeah.
But the Australians are better than what they've been playing up. So, I mean, you can go back to the Stokes innings of I think, Headingley 19 and see where he just dismantled the same bowlers, actually, who'll be on duty tomorrow, more or less, I'd imagine. And I wonder if that was actually where Bazball was conceived. You know, this very fine bowling attack was shredded, and they lost it completely because of the way that he played. And I reckon that's kind of where this started from. Even the best bowlers, if they are under attack, if they're not thinking clearly, they can go to ribbons as they did at Headingley.
Well, that was the template, wasn't it?
Yeah,
because Australia, they lost their nerve in the field. I'm sure
everything went
once the attack started.
Yeah,
and a few other things happened, like a bad review and an LBW and a muff run out, and it all contributed to. Yeah. Thank goodness it did, because as you know, you were there. That was the most exciting finale. But I like what Justin Langer said the other day. He said everyone needs to remember that all of that was cued by Stokes bowling at the end of the Australian innings when he knocked off the lower half, as it were.
Bowled for hours.
Yeah. He bowled 28 overs on the run. Amazing.
Yeah. Would you have liked to have played in this team, Finney, and have that fear factor removed?
Yeah, certainly. I think so many people have been and gone in international cricket and probably have been stifled by that fear of failure, fear of losing, fear of playing against Australia, especially when they're as formidable as they are, and they've just dealt with India last week in the World Test Championship final. You want to be free and mentally free when you're playing cricket. And actually, Ben Stokes' interview there is interesting, because underneath that there's an unbelievably determined man who wants and is desperate to win these Ashes. There's no doubt about that. He'll want to go down in history as the captain who played the style of cricket that he did and be judged on winning the Ashes. But it's interesting how him and McCullum go about getting their team in the mental state to go out there and produce their best. And a lot of that is about alleviating pressure from them, making them believe that it's not life or death, it's not the be-all or end-all. We're going to go out there, we're going to try our best, we're going to have as much fun as we can, and they see that as their way of getting the best out of this England team. And I think there's a lot of people who've played in the last 50 years probably sat here watching this team playing now, and partly because they've won 11 out of 13, but also because of the way that they're going about it. There'd be very few people sat there saying that I wouldn't want to be part of them.
Let's have a chat about the bowling attack. I mean, Aggers, as you say, you saw Ben Stokes running in. Yeah. He's strapped up, but he reckons he's going to bowl. But
he's going to have to bowl.
But the frontline pace attack, Broad, Anderson and Robinson.
Well, as you heard in my interview there, I mean, I took a deep breath and said that it looked rather one-dimensional, and it is. It's a very one-dimensional attack, and I was only semi-joking last week at Lords, and I suggested that actually leave Anderson out here, play Wood and play Anderson at Lords. Now, people were horrified, and it is very unlikely to happen, but it's simply because there could be a stage. It's a very flat pitch. It looks very flat. If Australia win the toss, bat first, around about tea time tomorrow, we're going to be saying, well, where's some pace? Where's something different? Where's something, rather than three very similar, very skilled, of course, but very similar pace, about 82 miles an hour. You've got the two old boys in there who the last time they played together in New Zealand had to be virtually wheelbarrowed off the ground because they made New Zealand follow on. They're absolutely jiggered. It's a big ask. It's a lot they're going to have to do. So I'm surprised they didn't play Wood. I watched Travis Head score a very good 100 against India, but there were some balls there up under his armpit and round about his nose that he didn't play very well. And the only person really who's going to be able to do that is Stokes, if his knee allows him to. So. Personally, I would have gone with Wood and left one of those out. Probably not Broad because he got wickets last a couple of weeks ago against Ireland. So that only relieves Anderson or Robinson, and Anderson's coming back off an injury. So that was my logic, but it'd probably be totally wrong. It's all ifs, buts, and maybes, isn't it? But that is a very one-dimensional attack. If they get after Moeen, who hasn't had a day in the field for 2 years, is only playing in an emergency. If they get after him. And Stokes' knee's feeling a bit sore. It's going to be hard work for those other three.
Harry Brook bowling again.
Well, exactly.
Yeah. Jamie, you made an interesting point about what might have gone through their minds with that selection.
England?
Yeah.
Well, I think Aggas has covered it, but they didn't in Australia and Brisbane when they decided, we'll just hang on to our firepower, our best bowlers until Adelaide. What? We're at the Gabatoir. It's got grass, it bounces, for goodness sake.
You've got to have Broad and Warner.
Well, you mentioned, right, okay, well, let's talk about Broad and Warner in that case, because I had a chat with Stuart Broad a couple of weeks ago, and I asked him about precisely that.
Yeah. We had a drink at the end of the last Ashes, and I think both of us, to be honest, thought that we might not play against each other again. Both of us are at the twilight of our careers, I suppose, and we sort of shared a glass and talked about a few of the battles we had, and ultimately the biggest mark of respect I could give him is the success he had against me pre-2015-ish made me have to change my bowling to him. I had to really study him as an individual, his style, and that created the success I managed to have against him in 19 and abroad. So he's been a hell of a competitor for me to play against, and really looking forward to another few battles with him. I would fully expect him to have changed a few things. I'm going to have to adapt to how he approaches it and adapt to the conditions we get, because the last Ashes series in 19 we played at the end of a World Cup in August and September. Pitches were very dry and seamed off the dryness. These games are much earlier in the summer, so I would expect conditions to be quite different.
And in the series that you've played, I mean, what is there still for you to do? Do you have unfinished business with the Ashes?
No, not really. I think I'm going into this series very free as a player and a person, looking to just really enjoy the experience. I don't feel any major pressure. I don't feel any major scrutiny to perform, and I just feel like I want to really enjoy the experience. And that's exactly how Baz and Stokes have set the group up. It is about entertaining. I very much have the mindset that I don't really care how many wickets I take as a player, but if I want to take important ones. So if I end up with one wicket in the day, but it's Warner or Smith, I feel like I've done my job for the team. And part of my unofficial role within the group is galvanising the crowd as well. There's times where if it feels a bit quiet, rev it up, get everything moving, and try and get the crowd sort of involved in the game and give the crowd experiences that they've roared the team on. So yeah, I feel really relaxed. I feel very, very comfortable with where I'm at as a player and a person. And if I play 1 game, 5 games, 6 games, whatever, as long as I make a bit of an impact in that, I'm good.
Well, that was Stuart Broad talking about his role as. Well, he has so many roles.
Crowd rever.
No, crowd rever. And I've actually just called up the scorecard of Trent Bridge 2015, Finney. It was the game that you played in Australia, all out for 60. It was one of those where I was watching. We were on holiday. I was watching it, sitting at the kitchen table, and I called the kids in from the garden and said, "Come and watch this. This is unbelievable." I mean, Stuart Broad, when he is in that kind of mood, and the fact that David Warner obviously, feels that this is the man who's got his number. How important is that as a fast bowler?
Huge, yeah. The psychological wins that you take from experiences like that are huge, and the confidence. Bowling's such a confidence game, even when you've got almost 600 Test match wickets, as Stuart has. it's still a confidence thing. You know, you're going out there, there's nerves. You sort of suss out how your day's going to go in your first over or so, and if you have those positive experiences against a player, it can help get you into your spell. So when Stuart's got the new ball, either tomorrow or on Saturday at some stage, if England have piled on 600 or something, by that stage he gets the new ball in his hand on the second day. Those positive experiences of getting him out LB, nicking him off in those two series will really help. And I think Aggers is completely right. I think part of the broad selection is because of how many left-handers Australia have in their top 7 or 8.
Instantly, that Trent Bridge test, 8 for 15 for Stuart Broad. You got one and Mark Wood got the other one.
I tell you, that's probably the best ball I bowled in my test career, and it just gets completely overshadowed. It was an away swinging nip backer through the gate, removed off stump, and everyone talks about Stuart Broad's 8 for 15. That's a disgrace.
Very unfair, isn't it? It's one of those. Is it one of the great Ashes battles for you, Jim, the Warner and Broad?
Yes, it's one of them. Because David Warner still has something to prove. He's already gone on the preemptive strike of saying, I'll be playing my last test in Sydney next summer. Well, I think the truth is he does need to get a few runs. And if the pitches are as flat as this one seems to be, I think he will get some runs. I think he will get away a few times. And if he does, he's really going to set things up for Australia. But yeah, that is one of the key battles. It's always the battle of the new ball. It'll be the same for the England openers. If anyone can get away to a reasonable start, it does set it up for Baz Ball and the rest of it from the middle order. So the form of Khawaja, or the lack of cricket for him, and Warner being in the twilight time, it does play a little bit into England's hand, but they've still got to produce the deliveries to get the wickets. And there was just a sign in the first innings, I thought, at the Oval, that Warner, when he's busy and he's alert and he's looking to turn the strike over, he can be the player of yore. We'll see. There's so many we'll sees about this series, and that's one of them.
And Pat Cummins said today that England are going to face a much more aggressive David Warner.
He played well last week, I thought. I mean, and I think Jim's right. He's going to come out and play. Because what would have frustrated him, especially on the last one, was just the way he got out really quite tamely, just prodding outside the off stump. That's not the way Warner plays. You know, he is a street fighter type, and he'd rather get out having a positive shot outside the off stump than just a little dangler. The interesting one is Khawaja. Well, thinking about it, saying hasn't made it through a whole series here yet. You know, he's not got a good record. I think he averages 19 in England. He's been brilliant elsewhere. He got those 200s when he came back against England 18 months ago. But in England, he struggles. And so if you do have Warner and Khawaja, both openers, both falling cheaply, that's an opener. You got Labuschagne in earlier, you got Smith in earlier. So that's something England will be looking at, I'm sure.
You've got two things, Ellie, going here. You've got the oldest Australian opening pair in an Ashes series since 1926, and it's one of the oldest English bowling attacks for many years. Yeah. So good luck to the old fellas. Yeah.
Absolutely. So Jimmy Anderson will be tomorrow 40 years and 321 days old. So he's nearly 41. I mean, it is ridiculous, really, isn't it? But he is set to become the oldest England player to open the bowling in an Ashes test since 1934.
Leicestershire's George Geary.
Okay.
Yes, there's a stand named after George Geary at Grace Road.
Fair.
So, yes. So there you go. Yeah.
I mean, let's not forget that in this test match in 2019, the series started with James Anderson breaking down in... how many balls did he bowl? Did he
bowl 4 overs?
4 overs. So is there any... Do you think he feels confident in his fitness? I'm listening to the Tailenders podcast on the drive up here. He says, he's been pain-free for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, he'll be bullish about that, I think. And he wouldn't have enjoyed or liked being in that position last year, walking off after 4 overs. You do sometimes you sort of question yourself about how you felt in the build-up to the test. I mean, as confident as a 40-year-old and 300-odd days can be in their body, I'm sure Jimmy is. But actually, the key thing for me in this series is going to be the battle of the number 6s. So you've got Cameron Green for Australia, who's young, hungry, fit, and looked in fine fettle last week. Not in the second innings with the bat, he dawdled a bit there, but he'll learn from that. But he's fit, he bowls hard, fast, he's 6 for 8. And a really, really exciting cricketer for Australia. And in the England camp, you've got Ben Stokes, And I think the supplementary overs that those two bowlers offer their teams is going to alleviate the pressure from the main 3 fast bowlers that both sides pick. And the output from those two will also determine how much those bowlers bowl, how tired they get, and how likely they are to make it through a series or not get injured. So I see that number 6 role as a really, really important one on both sides.
And while we're talking about the bowlers as well, and we've mentioned Cummins, of course, Cummins, Stark, Hazelwood, Boland. You know, we saw what Boland could do.
Well, they haven't decided who's going to play yet.
Yeah, well, not
yeah.
absolutely.
Well, they haven't published it anyway.
That's what I was going to ask you. So we saw what Boland could do, not just at the MCG, famously 6 for 7 last time out, but also he bowled really well in the first innings, particularly, I think, didn't he?
Well, he's a beautiful bowler in English conditions. He just bowls that little bit fuller. He bowls the English length, and he's relentless in his accuracy. And he hits the pitch hard, hits the bat hard, and he's just a wonderfully consistent bowler in these conditions. I mean, I'd play him, if I'm honest. He bowled well the other day. Hazelwood again, rather like Anderson, coming back from an injury. Would you play him ahead of someone who's actually match fit and bowling well? And that's the question. I mean, I'll say they haven't decided. They probably have decided. They just haven't announced what their team is going to be yet.
Who do you think it's going to be, Jim?
I think they'll go with Boland, Stark and Cummins and have Hazelwood up their sleeve for Lords. I mean, he took 20 wickets in 4 tests last time. Stark hardly played, but I think Stark is probably, when he's in rhythm and he's confident, he might be a slightly better bowler now than he was then. But what fascinates me about all of this discussion is, can anyone pick, is there going to be a McGrath moment in this series where someone does something calamitous that turns the series?
Are you practicing your underarm rolling a tennis ball, Jim?
I'm just thinking, where on earth could fate strike? Would it be Cummins all of a sudden? Because Cummins is the most resilient of bowlers, and so is Nathan Lyon. Yep. He's hardly missed a test. And on the other side, well, we keep talking about Stokes. I mean, seriously, will he be able to get through this series?
Big question. Yeah. If he's going to have to bowl, and he's going to have to bowl in the style that we think he's going to be bowling, and really putting his body into it, and bowling short, hostile spells, can he make it through? You could have a scenario, it's pretty negative here, where actually both teams lose their captains. Cummins could bowl himself out and just be too jaded to play one game, and Stokes could have a knee issue. I mean, Stokes would be more likely to play as a batsman, and therefore keep his place in the side if he couldn't bowl. But they're both captains being bowlers are vulnerable in this series.
But if these games do go most of the distance, as Finney would know, they're going to be bowling a lot of overs, those quick men. So there's going to have to be turnover. You cannot play 5 tests in 7 weeks with the same attack, surely.
How confident do you feel about Moeen Ali, Stephen, in the context of this particular game? And it's his home ground, but as Aga said, he's not bowled with a red ball in 2 years.
He hasn't. He'd have got a good number of overs in the last 4 or 5 days or so, I'd have thought, but that's not the same as bowling in a match, and the feeling and the atmosphere and the intensity and everything. It does make a big difference. He's been playing competitive cricket, and I think it's the environment that's going to help him get the best out of himself, not the preparedness or having played a 4-day game. I think that Moeen Ali, for me, when you look around the country, I think he was the correct selection to bring back or to ask to come back. I know there's been some criticism of that decision over the last few days from pundits, but I believe that he was the right man to come back and slip into this series from an England perspective. And I think you can discount his record before in terms of his poor record in Ashes series. I think if any captain and coach combination are going to get the best out of Moeen Ali, it's these two guys. And I'm excited to watch him play, actually. And if England do set a foundation, you've got Moeen Ali coming at number 8. I know he's not there for his batting predominantly, he's there for his off-spin, but it's a scary proposition, Moeen Ali coming in at 8.
What about his mindset bowling? Whereas he's just been used to bowling negatively, defensively.
Negative fields. Look at Jack Leach.
Absolutely. And then suddenly, if Edgbaston does spin, and it has done, and he's bowling last, and he's got men around the bat, I mean, it's a completely different mindset, isn't it?
Absolutely. And that's the one thing that Stokes will give him. He'll make him feel backed. And I think Moeen Ali spent a lot of his Test career dotting around up and down the order, batted as low as 9, as high as number 1. And he's not really probably felt comfortable or at home in his role within a team. There's always been question marks about, is he a proper spinner? Is he a proper batter? Is he a bit of both? But I'd imagine Ben and Brendan have both sat him down in the last few days and said, this is your role in the team. You're here to take wickets as an off spinner. You're here to get rid of their left-handers that they have in their top order. You're here to win us the games in the fourth innings if it goes that far when the pitches are dry, and you're here to put their bowlers, when they're tired and they're used to knocking over tails, you're there to put them under real pressure, and that gives you great clarity as a player. I've played my best cricket when I've got that clarity from a bowling perspective. You're here to bowl match winning or attempt to bowl match winning bursts, and not worry about the runs you go for, and that's the freedom they're going to give Moeen Ali, I think.
It was interesting. I think I was thinking about this when he was selected, Aggers, that he was with us last summer, wasn't he, Mo? He did a couple of Test matches.
Yes, he did.
Us, I think.
Once in one day.
And I could just sense that he was thinking, I'd love to be playing for a captain and a coach.
Yeah, I had a quick chat with him today, and I think we both agreed what a lovely opportunity this is. Who knows how long it'll last for?
Again,
just to come back and enjoy it.
It's not the be all and end all for him. I mean, he said that, didn't he?
He could just come back and just enjoy it, and it's an unexpected bonus. I don't think he'd have needed much persuasion, because I think he would have known what the environment's like. He's been watching it after all, so I don't think he'd have needed much persuasion. Just come and just suddenly, hey, I'm playing the Ashes again, which is that one word message, of course, that Ben Stokes sent him, Ashes ? And that's all it took.
If I was Ben Stokes and Steve Smith survives the first couple of overs of pace, I assume they're just going to bowl conventionally at him, not with ding-bang bouncing fields, I'd throw the ball to Moeen Ali, because I've often seen Steve Smith early in his innings against spin and get it wrong. Nicked off to slip, something like that. So it might be worth a punt if Smith, before he really gets into rhythm.
I'll just write that down, Jim.
Well, if there's a captain,
I'll go and tell Stokes.
Text Ben.
If there's a captain who's going to try it, it'll be Ben Stokes. He might even take the new ball,
because he'll give Moeen Ali some confidence at least.
Yep, absolutely.
Then he's got to execute and all that stuff. But still, yeah.
Right, let's hear from the Australia camp. Earlier on today, Aggers spoke to their captain, Pat Cummins, who said he can't wait for it all to begin.
Yeah, it's good. It's been a lot of planning and talk about it from everyone over the last few months. So pumped to be here and get out there.
An Edgemaster, and it can be pretty fiery. I mean, you've experienced it before. There'll be a few in your team that haven't. Have you talked about the crowd here?
We have a little bit. I think one of the funniest moments was on the bus rides home after each day's play in 2019. Yeah, we saw some sights out the bus window. So
comparing things that were said to you, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's part of the circus that the Ashes sometimes is. You got to embrace it and enjoy it.
What are you expecting of England, Pat? I mean, I've been watching them for a year. I was there at Hobart when you cleaned up last time. They seem to come a long way in a rather interesting manner. Have you been watching there?
From afar, I have. Yeah, they seem to be going about it slightly differently. They're guys that we do know quite well, though. We've played a lot against. Even say that Hobart Test, I reckon, probably 8 or 9 of the same playing 11 are still the same. So they're guys we've played quite a bit.
Do you think that the way they're playing was actually modelled on Headingley 19 and the way that Ben Stokes particularly played that day?
No idea, really. I think most teams are at their best when you don't have too many inhibitions, and that seems to be the way they go about it. And don't know where that stemmed.
But do you see the series as being like a more traditional way that you Australians play very successfully, and this kind of modern way that England are trying to set?
Yeah, I mean, I guess time will tell. I think our Aussie team's always been quite positive. Our batters generally score at a faster rate than some other countries. So, it might be a little bit different than, say, 2019 series, but we'll see.
And last time, there are a few in your team who might not come back here and haven't won the Ashes here before. So what sort of motivator is that for them?
Oh, yeah, it's big. I don't think we won an Ashes for 20-odd years here. So, even last week, ticking off the World Test Championship, some of the guys have also, won T20 World Cups, one-day World Cups. Well, this, might well be the final trophy to add to that cabinet. So there's always heaps to play for any Ashes series, but in a away one, you might only get a couple of chances throughout your career.
Well, that was Pat Cummins talking to Aggers down at Edgbaston a bit earlier on. Jim, your assessment of Pat Cummins so far as Australian captain?
I think he's been able to pull them all together, and the thing is, as in all sport, if you get continuity of personnel, that does help. When you're chopping and changing, you're unsettled, and it affects people's confidence. And the fact is that despite a few burbles in India with the team, mainly around the fact that he had to go home because his mother was unwell and so on, apart from that, when he has been there, it is been calm and controlled, and I think he's been a very effective leader. And he's worked out a way of communicating with the senior players to get some help when he needs it. But he's pretty much his own man about it all, and I think that's one of the pluses of having a fast bowler as a captain. And he seems to be able to differentiate between what's happening when he's got the ball and when the other fellas are operating, which has always been said as the problem for a bowler. That it was said by John Buchanan of Shane Warne, actually. He said, I don't think he would have made a very good captain, because when the game was going against him, he would have been too emotionally involved to be able to distance himself to what's going on. Whether or not that would have happened, we'll never know. But yeah, I think that's considered by a lot of people to be one of the reasons why a batsman is probably a better bet than a bowler to see the game and make tactical decisions.
But fast bowlers are the most intelligent in the
Absolutely.
team. They're the thinkers, they're the ones who do all the hard work. But so it's opposite. Cummins is the man.
Well, this is the problem, though. Their union is very weak, because when it comes to changing laws, it's the damn batsmen who do it.
That's true. That is true.
I remember when we were in Australia last time, I mean, because he was thrust into the captaincy very unexpectedly, wasn't he? And it does feel, as Jim says, that he's found a way of communicating. And is that down to, as Glenn McGrath told us on the preview show on Tuesday with Chappers, is that if he's got to focus on his bowling, then Steve Smith, as vice captain, takes over that communication role.
Yeah, well, I think they've worked out a nice way of doing it. And Pat Cummins, he doesn't strike me as the sort of person who delivers Churchillian speeches in the dressing room before they go out onto the field, but there's a calm confidence about him and his method and the way that he bowls and the consistency with which he bowls. And I think that the rest of the team feed off that. They had... he's got great clarity about the way that he wants the team to play. They've been consistent with their selection. And I think he's been a fantastic captain for Australia.
Let's talk about Steve Smith a bit more as a batter, and actually that batting lineup as a whole, because it is extraordinary when you look at it. And there are even you kind of get the feeling, don't you, that even if Khawaja and Warner fail, you've then got Labuschagne, you've got Smith, you've got Travis Head, who can all score huge runs, and we've seen them do it, Aggers. So yeah, well, is Steve Smith the batter that we saw 4 years ago?
He played pretty well again. I mean, I can only go recently what I saw last week when they played India, and he played a typical Steve Smith innings there. I mean, he and Labuschagne and Head, of course, who got the very good 100, but kind of the difference between the two teams, really. But then Labuschagne looked set, and then he dragged one on. You can get too worked up with plans and things. I think people bowl better at Smith now than they did. I think he just totally bamboozled people before. He ends up in such really strange positions. I think people now accept, actually, he bowled probably one stump wider of the off stump than he would do to other people. But he does hit the ball in some really strange places. But I think he's unruffled, isn't he? He came here 4 years ago after all that sandpaper gate stuff and scored 200s. He just blocked the whole thing out. He scored more hundreds in that series as well. So, yeah, I mean, those three. Head's more of a shot player. Head's more belligerent. I think we'll see him get a fair amount of short pitch bowling. I think we'll see him take it on, and that's why. Again, I go back to the Wood thing, because he does take it on. He doesn't just sway out of the way and say, I'm bored with this. He does have a go at it. He ramps, he hooks, he pulls, and convincingly. So, but he stood, as I say, he's got a very good 100 last week, stood up, played his shots, left-hander, typical flashing blade through the offside and so on.
They're the top 3 batters in the world, aren't they? The ICC rankings got reaffirmed this week, and Head, Labuschagne and Smith, Australia's 3, 4 and 5, are the top 3 batters in the world, and it shows the consistency. Labuschagne and Smith average near 60, Head averages 50. That's formidable when you're coming up against that on good wickets. So England are going to have to be on their guard with that middle order, and then they keep coming as well. You've got Cameron Green Alex Carey, who I think both are very talented as well.
Mustn't get wound up by them as well. The England's bowlers must not get wound up by Labuschagne, who's on his hands and knees, is messing around, and Smith jittery. Just ignore it. Don't get frustrated by it, because it's very easy to, actually. If you feel in a way that Labuschagne's slightly messing about when he ends up like on all fours, crawling around, getting out the way, and some Smith leaves and stuff. Just bowl it and block it and go back to your mark and keep going and not get sucked into it.
It's interesting to compare the two, bowling lineups and batting lineups, Jim, isn't it, really? Because you could say probably that England bat deeper, but do you think that in terms of the people who can score the volume of runs at the top of the order to get a first innings lead, you'd take Australia every time, would you?
Any team that's got Steve Smith in, I'd take. Behind you, I'd take Joe Root too. I think the one person we haven't talked about is Nathan Lyon. He could be the most important bowler in this series. If Australia are putting runs on the board, whether they're getting them quickly or Labuschagnely, just blunting the bowling, Nathan Lyon's going to be a big factor in this series. I mean, he's underestimated by a lot of people. And, okay, England will try to take him on, but it might be their downfall if they don't get it right, because he is a very clever bowler, and he's not easily ruffled or rattled, except perhaps when making run-outs at the bowlers at
vital times.
So, no, I think he'll be a very important factor, as he certainly was here last time.
Won the
He
game
took
last time.
9 wickets in the match, yeah. So
Well,
I wouldn't underestimate his contribution.
No. Let's do some predictions then, shall we, for a few minutes? I mean, I think you've probably all done your predictions on the BBC Sport website anyway, but it does feel to me as if I don't know how to call this, really, because there are so many unknowns in this, and you can, and how much can you look at past history and say these indicators of the past are a predictor of the future?
Well, I think Australia should have won here in 2019. That was a huge, huge missed opportunity for them. I think when you look back at that series, Stokes' heroics at Headingley lost them that game, and messing the toss up at the Oval lost them that game. Outside of that, those two moments, they were the best team, in my opinion, in that series by quite a considerable way. And they'll see this as a great opportunity now. And I think they're a fantastic cricket team. I watched them closely last week in that World Test Championship final, and they have all the ingredients of a team that should and could do well in all the varying different English conditions that we get. But there are many times over the last 12 months where I've thought England can't go to Pakistan and win 3-0. They can't go and play that style of batting against Kagiso Rabada and Anrik Nortje. We all said it before that series. I did, certainly. We don't know if they can play that way against them. And they did. And they keep confounding people that go against them in these scenarios. So my prediction, in a long-winded way to you, Ellie, is England 3-2, but it to be a very, very fascinating series.
We're not going to get any draws, are we?
No, you'd be amazed. The weather's the only thing that's going to cause a draw.
Well, everything for me hinges on this first Test match, actually. So that's also bottling out. But it's a question. If England can win this first Test, I think they'll win the Ashes. But will they? And I did on the website. I went 3-1 Australia. I feel a bit bad about that now, but that was actually I'd made that during that Test match last week, in which they looked so strong and so well led, very motivated. And England were out playing golf, but then that may be helping them motivate themselves. So the answer is, I think if England win this Test match, which they're perfectly capable of doing, that will really put pressure on Australia, because they're going to go and rethink and work it out. They haven't really rated Baz Ball up to now. They're going to have to, if England win it. If England don't win it, it goes badly wrong, I don't think they'll rethink anything, which puts them, again, in a vulnerable state for the next Test match at Lord's. So that doesn't really answer anything, does it? But except this Test match is a big one.
I know you like a number, but I think one of the most important things about this series, and it sounds a bit corny to say it, but it's true. Both of these teams love playing Test cricket. So this Test series is huge for Test cricket, given the threats that are around with all this franchise cricket and players leaping out of central contracts and going off to play. So if we've got players in Australia and England in particular, and I'd say more so than India, who are hungry for Test cricket, that's the big thing. Beyond that, well, I think Australia are the better side, and I'd say they'll win the series 4-1.
4-1.
What you can guarantee...
Got big there, Jim. 4-1.
What you can guarantee is that if we get to the Oval and England are winning it 4-1, as opposed to Australia 4-1,
Jim won't hear the end
Jim's
of
not
it.
going to hear the end of it.
I'll buy Agus a crunchy.
Very kind of you, Jim. Thank you.
That is for sure. But the other thing you can guarantee is that there are going to be dramas. There are going to be twists and turns. There are going to be Stuart Broad at Trent Bridge moments. There are going to be Steve Smith at Edgbaston last time out moments where he scored those 2 brilliant centuries and silenced the Hollies stand. There is going to be, well, maybe there'll be a Ben Stokes at Headingley moment. I mean, there will be moments that we will be talking about again in 4 years' time, because they will have added to the glorious fabric of the history of this incredible contest. And let's do the big plug. The first test of the men's Ashes gets underway tomorrow morning. Ball by ball commentary over on Sports Extra starting at 10:25, and plenty of updates and reaction here on 5 Live 2. The build-up starts earlier. Rachel is doing breakfast from Edgbaston as well, and then Tony will be at the ground for Drive later on. You can go to the BBC Sport website and app for video clips of the action during play. So when we're talking about an incredible Travis Head pull for 4, or an amazing wicket by Moeen Ali to dismiss and bamboozle David Warner, that will be the place where you can go and watch them immediately afterwards. Highlights every evening on BBC Two from 7 p.m. as well. You will not miss a single moment of the drama, and the voices that you've heard from this evening will be at the heart of that as well. Jonathan Agnew, lovely to see you. Jim, it's so brilliant to have you back in the country as well. It's always a pleasure. And Finney, we're going to be squeezed into a small box at Edgbaston tomorrow, but we'll have fun.
Can't think of anywhere else I'd rather be, Elliot.
Yeah.
They queue up to go into Elliott's box, you know. She's very choosy about who goes in there.
I definitely am.